U.S. Navy Hospital Corpsman, retired after 22 years of active duty. During my tenure, I was involved in the Battle of Al-Nasiriyah, which was infamously nicknamed Ambush Alley. For my actions on that day, I was awarded the Navy Cross. And next up is my partner, Nate.
And I'm Nate Emery. I'm your token grunt. Did 33 years in the DoD, 12 enlisted in the Marine Corps, and then 10 as an officer, and 3 years as a contractor, and a bunch of time as a government civilian doing things. And tonight, our guests, this feels kind of weird. I'm going to give you our guest as I'm going to run you back over to Doc Barry. But tonight, our guest is Johnny Riley. He joined the Army in 1988. I'm sorry. Say again. Why do I have her name as Johnny in the email?
That's my brother.
Okay, sorry.
It's right there on the screen too, dude.
Yeah, I don't. I'm reading off of the script that I wrote ahead of time, so I goofed that up. So in the future, when we edit this, that won't be there. Nobody will see it. I'll just be saying tonight our guest is Lonnie Riley, who joined the Army in 1988 and served till 1992 as an 11 Bravo and infantryman. He's with Alpha Company, the 1st Battalion, 17th Infantry, and he served in the Sinai Desert with the peacekeeping operations that were there. Then moved on to Desert Storm, and he did some time. He worked at the Texas Department of Corrections, and then he's what some of us call a retread. He went back into the Army again in 2002. And he's with Charlie Company, 1st Battalion, 30th Infantry Regiment with the 3rd Infantry Division. And notably, in January 2003, deployed with the 3rd Brigade of the 3rd Infantry Division to Kuwait during the buildup for the invasion of Iraq. And on 19 March of 2003, his battalion was one of the first to cross the line of departure into Iraq. And I won't go into the detail on these. I'll leave this for him to tell us the story, but his combat operations include operations in and around Talil Airfield, the bridge outside of An-Nasiriyah, where his battalion had 2 recipients of Silver Stars. Then they worked their way up the highway to Samawa, which is southeast of Baghdad, about 120 miles. And then they went further northwest to Ash-Shanafiya, where an engagement they were in, they had 35 Iraqi KIAs with 0 U.S. casualties. That's always a blessing. And then worked their way on up to the Karbala Gap, where they encountered the Iraqi Republican Guard and the Medina Brigade, division of the Republican Guard. And further, they pushed up to Baghdad, where his unit established their headquarters at the water treatment facility in the northwestern sector of Iraq. And from there, they ran combat patrols and humanitarian relief missions until June of 2003. Currently, Lonnie's a globally traveled premier blues musician with gospel roots. His sound is reminiscent of B.B. King and ZZ Top. And a couple notable things we'll get to here. What's one notable thing interesting, and I don't understand the context, so I hope you explain this to us a little bit. He had a coach named Billy Mac Fleming, and I just have the note Murder Trial, and then looks like a TV series called Murder Under the Friday Night Lights, Season 4, Episode 6. So I'm interested to hear about that too. But what's really awesome, after all that, is Lonnie tries to use his life experience to help veterans and other people having trouble coping with either loss of life, PTSD, high anxiety, or traumatic brain injuries. And next, I'll run it over to Doc Barry.
Hi, folks. I'm Andrew Barry, also known as Doc Barry. I am a psychologist and psychoanalyst, and I specialize in working with veterans and first responders fighting with PTSD. A couple of weeks ago, Lonnie's brother John, it's the Lonnie and Johnny show. No, Lonnie's brother Johnny came on with us, bluesman also, and John hooked us up with Lonnie. And I guess the first thing I wanted to ask you, Lonnie, is from what your brother told you and what you've seen of us so far on our YouTube channel, what made you want to come on with us? Go ahead.
Well, several things. I'd like to say, first of all, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this. it's almost like we got our bows mixed. I can't play a lick on anything. I can't even play the radio halfway. I sound so horrible singing, I will not even sing in the shower because I have grace and mercy on my wife and child in case they happen to hear me. That's how bad I sound. But anyway, I don't do that. And I think that we got some of my initial time in the military was I started out in the National Guard, ended up in Charlie Company, 2nd and 20th SF Group out of Columbus, Mississippi. They've moved down to Grenada since that time. And did some other stuff, but never been to Alaska. Don't want to go to Alaska unless I get a hunting trip. Now I'd like to go there, but the reason I wanted to go on is really several reasons. I meet people day to day, talk to them. Went through. I guess I'm a smorgasbord of trauma from, y'all know my brother's story and what happened to him. I was there. We're about 4 years apart. Um, the real thing is going through all this, you got to find a reason. Like, I mean, I don't understand all the reasons of what I did. Some of it was just stupid choices. I mean, going back in the Army at 31, 90 days later, I went from a pulpit to Baghdad in a matter of 90 days. Talk about shock factor there. But I knew what I was getting into, but I've been trying for a while to get into public speaking. Uh, the pulpit, I enjoyed it when it was, but it's not me. There's a lot of things out there. People put boundaries on you, and you can't. You know, I'll go into a bar and get a guy. I'll go in. I told a friend one time. I said, "Look, man, I know you're in a really dark place." He goes, "Yeah," and he don't understand this because he never was in the military. And I said, "Look, I'm the guy that'll come sit in the dark with you and walk you out, or I'm the guy that'll sit in the dark with you until you get strong enough to walk out, and we'll walk out together." It takes a special type of mindset to do that. So this was my first opportunity to be on a podcast. Uh, I researched as much as I could on you guys and see, but there's one thing that I know about me. I'm broken. I've been looking for years to for help, and I get help along the way or whatever. But there's a lot of people that don't know how or won't ask help because the way we were taught and raised up. The military nowadays don't seem like the military I grew up in. You didn't ask for help. You didn't do you coped or you drank a lot and you fought a lot or you did whatever you had to do. But now I'm sitting here going, what is the point of going through all this in my life if I can't take it and use it for some type of good? And so I thought maybe coming with you guys, I already felt comfortable because I looked at what y'all did, you know, uh, understanding, and I know that most veterans don't judge other veterans, especially over the 20-year period that we were over there doing what we had to do for God and country, whatever we believe now and whatever some of the truths we know now. There's a lot of people out there hurting and broke, man. And so if I can show them, give them just a little hope to stop them from suck starting a 45, you know, it'll make it worth it. So hopefully I can out of this I can get some healing for myself, help somebody else, and maybe you guys can help me learn how to get into more of the public speaking. Uh, and I don't care how big or small or whatever, but I've had several people contact me. I have a friend that does it full time, and he's told me for years, you need to do this. You could really impact people and help them. So um, that's one of the reasons I wanted to come on. Well, it ain't one reason; it's a bunch. But I got to get this out and help because one of the things when you're in the military, they train you to train. And so what I know is that you guys are doing a lot of the stuff that I want to do. You guys are helping people, and so when you get around that, it elevates you. If you want to make more money, put yourself around 10 guys that make more money than you. And you're either going to get pulled up to their level or you're going to fall by the wayside, period. And so I live my life like that.
Oh, sorry, I thought I had unmuted. So, thank you for that, Lonnie. One thing I want to say before we continue on, to all y'all gentlemen and anyone in the audience, I forgot to say at the beginning, because we are going live now as well. Yes, we do have Dr. Barry on here with us, but he is not here to give any type of medical advice, any type of counseling. Please, 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 we always urge you that if you are finding yourself in any type of difficulty, to please reach out to your healthcare provider and your medical team. Once again, we are not here to provide any sort of medical diagnosis, treatment, and or therapy. Doc Barry, I hope I covered all that for you, brother.
Perfect. Thank you, Luis. What we have to offer our listeners is informational. So, go ahead, Lonnie.
But Lonnie, one thing that you did say in your answer about wanting to just share this with someone, it reminds me of how a lot of veterans that go through these hardships, right, and have found themselves at what maybe their rock bottom is, right. Everyone's rock bottom could be different, you know, or everyone's hardship could be different. Let's put it that way, right? But I think what the commonality is when veterans find this this comfort now, this peace, right? That they've been searching for so long, right? I think a lot of us search for that. Um, you said it absolutely the best. In the military, especially when you get into a leadership position, we get trained to train the next person, right? Once we have a skill set, we don't keep that to ourselves. We want to pass that on. And I think that's beautiful how you put it, right? Is I have found this and I just want to give it back to my brothers and sisters. I think that's a beautiful gift.
It's kind of hard out here, in my opinion, because uh, our mindset of sacrifice and train and helping people in team, that's the word I'm looking for, team, is a whole different level. And then when you get the machine eat you up, you know, the military, and your time's over, uh, you know, you're kind of thrown out here to the wolves. And then all of a sudden you have no support system, and you have no, and and I don't care how much your spouse, significant other, whatever you want to call them nowadays, are going with you and went through it. When you get out, they really don't understand whenever that nighttime comes, when you're walking around the house and there's nothing, because you have, man, I call buddies, man, and be like, hey guys, what are y'all doing? Oh man, we ain't got time to talk, we rolling. And so it's like going from hypersensitive team mode to I'm down, I'll jump on the grenade, so to speak, to having nothing is really a shock. Or it was for me, you know.
No, yeah, absolutely. It's recently I've been seeing a lot of it posted around like Facebook and Instagram, but it's basically a group of I think that it might be Marines riding in a helicopter, and it looks like it's Iraq, and they're shooting rounds, you know, at some combatants, and they said it's basically the caption says something of like, one moment you're going from this, and then the next moment, and then it flips the scene to like a nice quiet drive down the highway, right? And
Yeah.
it says like people will not never understand um like something about the quietness, right? Like, you
Yeah.
know, so I know what you mean.
I explained to one guy, he said, what's it like being in the army and then getting out? I said, it's like having a heart attack. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, you know, if I'm not mistaken, your blood goes around your body at about 214 miles an hour. It can make one loop, right? And so you're running. I'm under the be all you could be era. You know, you're running and gunning. And they had a commercial back in the whenever I was a kid said we do more before 9 o'clock or 6 o'clock than most people do all day. Well, when you're running like that for 10, 15 years or whatever, then you get out. You go from 200. It's almost like your heart just stopped because you stop. You literally feel like you stopped, and you're sitting there and you're getting up at 3:30 in the morning, and you'll go run for a little while, and then things start going. But it's just a different. I mean, they don't like you when you're singing cadence in your civilian neighborhood by yourself. So
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's like the cops like, "Hey, man, are you okay? What are you doing, man? I'm just out here running, minding my own business." Yeah, but you woke up the whole neighborhood. All right, sorry.
Right. Lonnie, it's we don't talk about it in this vein, but I think if people think about it, they'll realize there's a lot of similarities. It's kind of culture shock, right? Because you're surrounded with people who speak the language that you speak. You're a whole different culture into itself. And
Mhm.
then all of a sudden you get spit out into the civilian world and you're trying to make yourself fit in. And I know that what I'm about to say is not necessarily the case for many people, or maybe only me. I don't know. But I always felt like I was an observer. Even after when I left the unit that I went to combat with,
Mhm.
I never felt like I was part of that unit. I always felt like I was somebody in the corner watching everything else happen because they had a whole different experience of life than I did. And when I came to the civilian side, after I retired, it was even worse. I just felt like I was walking around in somebody else's world, and I wasn't, and still feel this way. I'm not part of it. I know how to act like I'm part of the story,
Yeah,
but I don't know really how to fit in quite right. And I
I
think
have,
a lot of people have some degree of that in their transition.
I have a lot of people that are my friends, but to me they're acquaintances. I don't have true friends. If I got what I would consider a true friend, I feel like you're lucky if you got five. That's a full plate for me. And what I look at, the military is so, to me, looking back, it was easy for me because as a child, I grew up in such a dysfunctional family, and then I went through all this trauma, and then it's like my brother. I don't think he said this, but they were my parents had put us in the middle of the floor. My brother he was strong, man. He was 4 years older than me, and they put us in the floor and, hey, fight. Whoever loses gets a whipping. Stuff like that. So I was a fighter going in, so I just fit right in, and then that becomes your norm. You know, I consider it like being in prison because you get institutionalized. Not that you're locked down or anything, but you get into that routine and you do it so long, you eat it, breathe it, and you meet some real warriors. Man, I was a guy that just went to work every day. I was a you know I was an infantry guy, paratrooper. I jumped. I didn't do nothing really special. I just did my job. You know what I'm saying? But where I got kind of ruined is whenever I went to 20th group. I went to selection 2 or 3 times and didn't make it. And so in the guard, because I started in the guard and then went in the regular army. You know, I hung out with some guys that was just true warriors, and you still learn a lot. Information is information, and those guys molded me. So whenever I went from light infantry to mechanized, oh man. Now I got an appreciation for the Bradley whenever we was in Baghdad. I love that thing. But before that, I was just like, oh my God, I was so far out of my element. And first day I walked in, I had starched and iron, spit shine boots. They didn't do that no more. It was brush shine and wash and wear. And I'm like, ain't you guys got any pride? And I was a 31-year-old E4 at the time too. I came back in as the E4, and I was like, they got female corporals? What is going on? So I was a duck out of water, and I'm like, oh God. And which, man, that opens up a lot of can of worms right there. I'm talking, but yeah, I get you, man. I really do. I still don't fit in. I've been out since '08, and I don't want to fit in.
Something else and I know Luis would understand this too. When you're with combat arms or attached to combat arms, you get so used to what you're doing, you kind of forget how unusual it is, right? And some people think that sounds cliche if somebody was to ask you, well, what did you do in the infantry, right? Well, we tend to talk about all the individual cogs and the things that we did, but what it comes down to is you spend that time in combat arms learning how to kill other people. And when you just say it out loud to a civilian, it might sound like you're talking about one-on-one interpersonal, but they don't understand that even up at the division level, that's what you're doing. you're making these huge plans on how you're going to channelize your enemy, right? And how you're going to fix them in place, put them in a hurt so you can kill as many as possible in the shortest amount of time with the least amount of casualties for your own side. And it becomes so clinical that you don't even think of it like that, right? And it's not until I do things like I just filled out a questionnaire at my church for this pathway to leadership thing. And they kept asking all these questions about things that you translate from your your military life to your civilian life. And I was like, there's nothing that translates, you know? And I think once you leave combat arms, you leave the military, you realize that your whole way of thinking, even though it's very structured and there's all these different levels and you go to all these professional schools to learn all this stuff, you kind of get in the weeds and you forget that overall what you're learning to do is to kill efficiently. And so when you get into the civilian world, it's hard to
Hugs and
figure out, you know, how to live like a normal person.
yeah, yeah. That's hard because um, guy told me, he said, "You guys, I got a friend, and he said, you know, you guys are trained to see what's out of place, what's wrong. I can spot stuff's wrong every day of my life. I'm 54 years old, and I will go into a restaurant and I can tell you who's the tough guy, who's the real tough guy, who's the blowhard, who's the masculine man, you know, and I just sit there and look at stuff, and I will never be the same. You know, I walked into the recruiter and told him I wanted to shoot people in the face and blow stuff up. He goes, "Man, I got a job for you," and he said, "I'm gonna send you all over the world." He didn't tell me I was gonna walk all over it, but
Yeah, that's true. Hey, Dougberry, you had something earlier you're going to
Yeah.
say?
For those of us who don't know, starting with myself, Lonnie, what's the difference between light infantry and mechanized? Can you expand on that?
so yeah, back when I first joined light infantry, your house was on your back. It was just a rucksack. So they either dropped you off, you walked there and fought, or you jumped in out of airplanes, repelled out of helicopters, or whatever. Uh, the mechanized, they would be in a Bradley, and the back of a Bradley carries a squad or a team. And so you have three guys that operate the Bradley. Then you have the infantry team that's in the back. They pull up, lower the ramp, and the ground troops, so to speak, get out. And so you're carried where you go. You're not walking, but they might drop you off and meet you 20 miles away. I mean, so it was considered a mechanized uh, group. You know, I think they've even taken away the hotel status on some of them, which is I forget what it was called, because you have the infantry guys that are light. Then you had the mortarmen. We call them 11 Charlies. We were 11 Bravos. They were 11 Charlies. And then any identifier you had, like if you was a papa, which was parachutist, or a jump master, which is I think a 5 whiskey or something like that. You get identifier bars all the way down. So it would be like when you came in, you'd be 11 Bravo 10, which is a private. And then if you went to airborne school, it'd be 11 Bravo 10 papa. So that's the difference.
And Solani, I would like to know what initially got you to join the army, the first go around, and then got you to get out and then come back in. If you wouldn't mind taking us through that journey.
Man, the home life, bro. Uh, I was a pretty good athlete. Was hoping, you know, I grew up dirt poor. I was in oil field trash, you know, so little town. You're gonna go to school and play football. You're gonna play every sport. You're either gonna go to college that way if you didn't have the money, or you went to the oil field, or you went to the army. And so my parents had moved me. My brother was gone, so I had been moved 4 or 5 times in high school. I was in holidays out of Texas. My sophomore year, going in 2-a-days, we moved. We moved to Dennis Springs, Louisiana. Played that year there. 6 months after I got there, they moved me to a town called Welch, Louisiana, which was a great town. Had a good mentor there by the name of Dutton Wall. Met some guys that was really great. But my senior year, they moved me to a little town called Water Valley, Mississippi. And so I had enough credits to graduate and was on track to graduate there in Louisiana, and they moved me. And whenever I got there, I needed 18 credits to graduate in that state, if memory serves me right. And I already had 21 credits. But in Louisiana, you could take speech instead of English 3 your junior year. So that's what I did. Then I was taking English 3 my senior year. They wouldn't let me take, I had all the prerequisites. They would not let me take English 3 and 4 together. And I had some family that lived up there that principal didn't like. And he was like, "Oh, no, you can't do this." And I was like, "Okay." So what I need to do, so I petitioned the school board to see if I could do it by correspondence course while I was there. And he's like, "Look, you ain't going to graduate. It's just that simple. You're going to have to go a whole nother year." And I was like, "Hey, Cat Daddy, there's got to be something that we can do. And so ends up what happened was we go to the school board, everything gets worked out. He says, "Okay, you can order this correspondence course." So I order it, I pay for it. And then whenever it gets to me, I take it to him. I say, "Okay, Mr. So-and-so, here's this." And that dude said, "If I'm lying, I'm dying." He looked at me and he said, "Well, you don't have no books." I said, "Man, what do you mean books? I thought everything came in that package." He's like, "You ain't got no books. You got to order books." And he looked at me and he said, "I told you wasn't going to graduate." And I kind of I said, "What?" And I stuck everything back in that bag and I folded it up and I stood up. And whenever I turned to walk out, he goes, "Where are you going?" And I turned around and I threw it at him. And I said, "I'm going home." And I walked out. Got to my house. My mom said, I told him, I said, "I quit." I walked out. And I walked in to my house. My mom was on the phone. She said, "The principal said you just quit." I told her what happened. And instead of them making me go back and just tough it out, she said, "Well, call your daddy, tell him you need a job." And I went to work the next day. I went to work pouring concrete. And so whenever I went to work pouring concrete, I said, "Man, I can't do this. So I went to the Army, and I go to the Army, and they just changed that rule. Good old Reagan, he said, "Hey, if you don't have a high school diploma, you can't get in." And so I said, "Okay." So I went immediately and I took my GED because you had to have a GED and 15 hours of college. I couldn't afford college. I took my GED. I got to asking around. The National Guard back then, if you served a year in the National Guard, then you could go regular Army, something like that, but you could still get in. And I went to them cats. I was like, "Hey, man, I want to join." They said, "When you want to leave?" I said, "As soon as possible." "What do you want to do?" "The longest thing you got." And I was gone. Back then, you could be gone quick. I was gone in probably less than 3 weeks, and I left and went in the Army. And then whenever I came back, that's whenever I seen one of my classmates and met her dad, which was a sergeant major in 20th group, and her brother was a staff sergeant on the green team. And so I become friends with them and tried out and got accepted to go try out for the big boys.
What do you mean try out with the big boys? You mean like the special forces groups?
Yeah, so what it was is I didn't know they had it. And it was 20th Group Special Forces, and basically back then they were all National Guard. A lot of them was from Vietnam era, and so and a lot of those guys had already went through. Uh, they were much older, and they had stood them up, I think in 66, 67 time frame, and so they had these guys everywhere, and they were unassuming. You know, you didn't know it. And so whenever I met him, he was like, "Hey, call this guy Mikey Kennedy." And so I called him, and Mikey was like, "Yeah, look, check it out, man. Here's the thing. You're going to come over here. You bring all the military equipment you got, whatever you got," which I didn't have nothing. I was in a field artillery unit. You know, I had made 2 drills and just got out of basic AIT, but I was 18 years old. Well, yeah, I was 18. Uh, I turned 19 in basic. So I come back and they say, "Yeah, it's not a scheduled drill for you, but you have to try out. So here's the options. You try out, we'll give you a letter of acceptance if we like you and you're in shape. Uh, while you're here, we will feed you. But if something happens to you, we'll do our best to save you. But if you die, you die. You don't get the insurance, you don't get nothing. You just, you know." And I was like, "All right, sounds good to me." So I show up uh, with 2 uniforms, some running shoes, and this is how dumb I am. I got cotton socks on, man. I was wearing cotton socks. Well, we go there, and these guys, I'm looking around, and there's all these, you know, they're all Green Berets, and we had these guys called SOPC, Special Operation Preparing Course, and these was I didn't care what rank you were, you didn't have a long tab. If you didn't have a long tab or in the Q course, man, you got over there, you ate last, you did it. You was crawling in the ditch with everybody else. It didn't matter if you was a captain on down. And so whenever I get there, one of the guys I really enjoyed was Parnell, Michael Parnell. He was a lieutenant, and that dude was hard as woodpecker lips, man. I mean, he was just hard. Just came back from Ranger School. He had went to selection. They looked at him and said, "Look, you don't have no experience. We're not selecting you. Go to Ranger School, graduate, come back, and we'll take you up." And so, okay, uh, Parnell comes out and goes, "Hey, we're going on a ruck march." Now I've never been in the real military, you know, like I've just went to basic and all that. Had the baby packs, and there's a guy that was a Vietnam vet that was sitting there, chain smoking. You know, it's like they woke up with scotch and smoking Lucky Strikes. And the guy, he goes, "Hey, you got a rucksack? We're going on a ruck march, and you're here." I said, "They don't even issue us this." And Paul Parsons said, "I got a rucksack for the lad," and he's standing by the door by his 4-wheel drive truck, sitting there smoking with another guy named Jimmy Don Hale. And I walk over there, and this guy, skinny guy, not very big, I look on this rucksack, and he's got these big foam things on the straps. He picks it up with one hand. He hands it to me. When I'm thinking, dude, I like to broke my neck. It took me to the ground. I mean, it was heavy. I put it on. He goes, "This is how you wear it. Do this. Keep up with him." I was like, "Yes, sir." We take off on about a 6-mile ruck march. There's about 30 or 40 guys. I ain't part of the unit. I'm just a dirty, nasty leg, man. I ain't got no airborne wings, nothing. And we take off. You got Parnell and 4 or 5 guys. I'm the 5th guy. And we take off, and I'm just walking along, walking along. All of a sudden, he says, "Turn around, let's go pick up the trash." And I look behind me, and we got guys strode like 500 yards behind us. So we would make loops like that. Every time he passed me, he goes, "What's your name?" I was like, "Riley, sir, Riley." So we get down to the Tombigbee River, and he said, "Y'all drink water." And when the last guy comes through, he looks at us and he tells them, "Okay, we've seen it. Let's go back." And he takes off. And when he takes off, us 5 just kind of looked at each other and took off. And we're passing guys, and they're moaning and complaining, man. They had dirt in their, you know what I'm about to say. I mean, it was funny, man. It was just funny, like all these grown men crying, you know. And I ain't been there. Now, I got cotton socks on, right? My feet's burning. I ain't got a lick of sense. Rolling, and he turns around, comes back after everybody gets going. You know, we did about a mile and came back, and he told us, he said, "Y'all drop your sackers over here." He put them over there, and he came over. He said, "I'm fixing to do some remedial PT." He said, "Whenever I do, I want you guys walking around and making sure they doing everything correctly." And my hand goes up. I'm like, "Hey, sir," I said, "I ain't even part of the unit yet." He said, "Listen, if you can come from Legland and these people have been here 2 years and you smoke their tail like that, they deserve to get smoked by a leg." Roger that. And I went over and barked like a freaking dog, man. And I said, hey, sir, can we, I think something's wrong with my feet and I need some help. They're just burning. He said, "Pull your boots off." Man, them white socks was not red anymore. And he was like, "Don't you?" I said, "Sir, I don't know. I ain't never seen a pack this big. You know what I'm saying? I'm just a private." And he called a dude over there, Jimmy Don Hell, the guy that was sitting there, got me some moleskin. That's the first time I got introduced to moleskin. Hooked me up. I got tincture beans on the blisters, squirted it in there, smashed it. Boy, that was an experience. That first reel was an experience. Next day, I got on a C-130 and rode Nap of the Earth, and people puking around. I thought, man, I got to do this. This is the greatest thing since peanut butter. And they gave me my letter, and I went over there, man. I was watching people go out the aircraft, and that door open. They was slipping through the puke because the guy puked in the door like a dummy, and I was like, man, this is the life. I went back and asked for a transfer, and they gave it to me. And so I stayed right there for Desert Storm and all that. We went to Bragg for Desert Storm, and that's whenever I got to go to airborne school when we got activated. So, but I wouldn't have made it. I'll be honest with you. One time I was praying and I asked the Lord, I was like, you know, I was griping. I wasn't really praying, and I told God, I was like, man, you know, you gave me a dad. He didn't teach me nothing. If I ever heard a voice in my head, it was that day. And he goes, "Yes, I did." And I was brazen. I was like, "Oh yeah, what did he teach me?" He goes, "He taught you what not to do." And so probably the success and the hardness I had to make it through the military came from the way my parents treated me, which wasn't good, but you know, it made me who I am, I guess, because I had an okay career. It was nothing special, but it was. Uh, I was hard at one time. Now I'm just kind of soft.
We all get there, right? Especially after a while. So, and so what made you get out the military service the first time then?
Um, well, ended up I went to selection twice. Uh, you know, people don't realize when these recruiters come and they recruit you, they don't tell you that it has the highest alcohol and divorce rate in America. You know, I remember when the 82nd Airborne was dubbed the most physically fit alcoholics in America in the early 80s. You know, they did a 60-minute timepiece on them. And so I had actually become a single parent at a very young age. And so whenever there was a man, the company commander, Major Todd, I was going to selection my third time. And I was a single parent of a 6-month-old little girl. And he was like, he's a Christian man. And he was like, "Riley, what are you doing?" I was like, "What do you mean, sir?" "Well, I'm getting ready to go to selection." "Well, what about this?" And he started asking me questions. And I was like, "Sir, you know, I'm just doing what I got to do. You know, this is what I want to do. This is what I got to do." He goes, "You know, there's more important things." He said, "Riley," his exact words was, "If I could give you a tab as long as you've been doing it and the way you carry yourself, I'd give you one." He said, "But some things are more important." And I was like, I didn't understand it at the time because I was 22, 23 years old. You know, I wanted to do what I wanted to do. No excuses either, man. Those guys that make it, they get selected. Uh, The only reason I didn't get selected is because of me. But nobody else, nobody did anything. You know, I hear a lot of guys come through. Yeah, I went through this, and you know, I would have made it if. No, you just sucked. You know, the fact of the matter is, on it. Looking back, I didn't do enough. It's like a guy. I told a guy the other day. He goes, "Yeah, I'm thinking about going to selection." I said, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "You're not going to make it." He goes, "Why do you say that?" I said, "Because selection started yesterday. You 6 months out, and you talking about going. It started back there. You know, you better change your mindset because I seen guys that was beast that couldn't hack it mentally. You know, it's just a different mindset." And he said, after about 15 minutes of talking, I was like, "Sir, you know, I don't have," he was like, "Riley, you're not going back to selection. You go see Bruce, you tell him." I said, "Sir, if I can't be in this unit, I don't want to be in any other unit." I mean, how do you go from jumping out of Hueys and Sky Cranes and C-141s and all that and go back, you know, to a field artillery unit or a medical unit or whatever? Because that adrenaline, all that stuff you was doing, you know, it's just different. And I said, "Sir, just put me in the reserve." He said, you tell him what you want, we'll make it happen." So I got out, and then, you know, it's like I want to say almost 7 years later that I went back in. They said, "You got to go through basic again." So I was like, "All right, no worries, you know, whatever." And I'd ate enough fried chicken for being a preacher that I wasn't in the best shape. So, you know, so my
That
belt was,
must have been weird.
yeah, it was, man. It was that was probably a big transition. You know, I had a cowhide fence around a chicken bone graveyard, and you know, I was a lot bigger and a little bit, uh, you know, things had changed. I had a family. You know, I'd already been divorced. Um, Going into watching my dad grow up. My dad was the type of dude that he walked in whenever I was 13. He said, "You want to be a man? I'm gonna treat you like a man." I never got a whipping with a belt again. He put those suit bones on me. Anything happened, he it lumped me up, man. And so whenever I got 17, I told him, "Hey," uh, he came in, said he's gonna whip me. I said, "You make it good because that's gonna be your last one." And boy, he did, man. He hit another gear. I ain't gonna lie. Old man was strong. He's about 6'2", about 240. And he did it. And he tried to touch me again whenever I come home. Because whenever I came back out of the military, I moved in. I still had a curfew at 12 o'clock at 23 years old, you know. And but whenever I kind of lost my train of thought, I got off there. My dad hit my brain. I had that separation, uh, and then I'm out and I'm preaching, you know, doing my thing, enjoyed it. I had two boys that had muscular dystrophy, and so I had prayed. Uh, it was really hard. Didn't think, you know, I made a decision with good intention. I went back in for the benefits, something I knew, you know, didn't really have, I could weld, do some other stuff, but it's out here trying to help people again. And I got two kids with death sentences on them. And so I was like, man, uh, I watched the towers fall, you know, I seen that happen. I was sitting there and I was thinking, man, seen the 101st ramp up, you know, everybody was in Afghanistan. So I knew what I was getting into. And I was just like, hey, that's the only path I can see right now. I mean, I'm starving to death. Kids ain't doing good. So I went back in. I had a buddy that I'd met in 20th group. I'd known him since he was 18, moved my whole family in with him. And he watched them. He was in 20th group. Uh, he was full-time AGR, went and got his tab and stuff, moved my family in there. They said, you got to go back to basic training. And I was like, okay. And I had went to the MEP station, and I'll go in there. I got probably, I had a lot of jumps, man. We'd do lifts on sky cranes, and you may jump 5 times in a day. Where they just take us up in a Huey, jump out, and old timers like, give that young, and he needs some experience. You'd be wore out. And I went in there and I was like, hey man, I want to go in the infantry. And they say, oh no, you ain't going in the infantry. That ain't happening. I was like, oh, okay. And because what happened, I had an MOS, but whenever I went to 20th group, you actually got placed in an 18 series slot, but you weren't MOS qualified. So you could literally have an MOS that you never worked in, which happened to me. And I was holding an 18 series slot and training with the teams, and then we would do the other stuff, and then you go to selection, so it'd give you a leg up on everything. The guy told me, he said, you ain't gonna do that. You already been in. We ain't wasting no money on you. I said, okay, thank you. Have a good day. I got up, walked out, walked down to Burger King. I'm eating a hamburger. Recruiter calls me and goes, what are you doing, man? I was like, that dude told me I couldn't have what I wanted. Where you? I said, I left. What do you mean you left? I said, I ain't signing no pay. I said, dude, I'm 31. I ain't got time to play games, And he's like, I said, either he gonna do this or you need to take me back home. I'll call my wife. And he's like, give me a second. Walk right back in there. It was about 30 seconds, man. Sign that paper. Sent me to Fort Benning, Georgia, man. And that's where I came in there and went back to basic again. And had fun the second time because I couldn't mess with you mentally, I mean, they just told me not to mess up their privates. So I was like, all right, I won't play with your privates, drill sergeant.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you that, right? Like,
Yeah.
especially because it's not like you went from like the Army, got out, and then went to the Navy or the Marine Corps, right? You went from the Army, got out, and then went right back to the Army. If there was, I wouldn't necessarily like in front of everyone, in front of all the recruits, were you treated differently? But was there ever like a behind the closed doors discussion, like, hey, look, dude, this is formality. You already know what's up. Don't fuck with, like you said, don't fuck with the recruits. Let us do what we need to do, and you just get on about your business.
Well, what a lot of people don't realize is like it was basically what I had to go to. They send you back to boot camp or basic to get you back in shape. And so if say like you're in regular Army and you're a 76 or 88 Mike, right? And then you reclass, they send you to infantry boot camp or any other school, you're going to AIT. So it's advanced individual training. So like what the difference between infantry and everything else was, when you went to infantry basic training, you graduated basic training, you never went anywhere. The next day, they'd walk up and say, congratulations, you graduated basic training. Now you're in AIT. Get down and do push-ups. I mean, but like if you went to basic like in Fort Sill, then you would go to Fort Jackson to do training for your AIT if you was a mechanic or whatever. So whenever I went back in, I had airborne wings and all that, and they was like, pin on stuff whenever I was in was a no. You don't do that. You're lazy if you did that. And so, man, I stayed up all night. Whenever I got there to basic, my drill sergeant, one of my drill sergeants was from the 101st. The other two was from the 82nd. One of them was the 82nd NCO of the year. And so Ranger qualified, all this stuff. So I stayed up all night and I hand sewed my little wings on, and showed up the next morning with stuff. And the dude's looking at me, and they're already pissed because now you got a guy that's never been in the military looking at you thinking you're God because you got a little cloth on your chest and you jumped out of an airplane. Oh my God, what's it like? What's this? And so there was 4 of us that was prior service that went back in. And so my drill sergeant come up and he was like, hey, Riley, where'd you get your airborne wings? I was like, 1991. Golly, I wasn't even in the Army then. This dude's an E7, and I'm like, yeah. He goes, how old are you? And I told him, he's like, who was you with? And I told him. He said, oh, you was with the 20th group, because they stay up at Bragg all the time. And he was like, look, y'all be messing up. Y'all infect my privates. I'm gonna put that scunion on you. And so we had this really soft commander come in, this captain. I don't know what is, but we were in the barracks with everybody. And he was like, our drill sergeant was like, look, y'all know the deal. We ain't putting you in charge. We need to. I was like, all right. And if they needed something done, they'd come to us and talk to us. But this commander comes in and goes, why are these prior service guys living in the barracks? Well, you couldn't get across posts and get there and move out at 3 o'clock in the morning a lot of times, so ended up what happened was he pissed the drill sergeants off. So the drill sergeants moved us into the TA-50 room because we were prior service, and by Army standard, we had to have our own rooms. So they looked at us and said, we're going home. Anybody got any problem with the TA-50 now? Y'all got to issue it out, and I better not come up short. And so we moved into the TA-50 room, which was connected to the drill sergeant's office. And so also they said at the end of the training day, if we didn't have any training, we was allowed to go to the PX, get lickies and chewies and all that kind of stuff. Said, y'all have privileges that they don't because you're not. So, man, the first thing I did, now, whenever I was in the first time, I did Copenhagen. If you don't drink, smoke, or dip when you go in, you're going to do one of those three by the time it's over, and a lot of it. And so, man, I ain't dipped in 7 years. I was a preacher, right? So he's telling me all this. And I'm like, he goes, what, Riley? What? You want some porn? I was like, no, I don't. I said, you said we had other privileges. He goes, what are you talking about? He's got a big old, Copenhagen that would kill a mule. I go, dip, drill sergeant. He goes, I'm telling you right now, if you bring that back and I find them privates on there, you're going to eat the whole can. I'm going to buy a whole roll and you're going to eat it. So I was like, roger that. And so he never cracked on anything, and I held up my end, And one day we're sitting on the range, and he looked at me, and everybody had left, and he goes, hey, Riley, man, what you think about this? And we start talking. He pulls out. He goes, hey, you want a dip? I was like, you ain't tricking me. I'm old school. I know you. Yeah, you. He goes, no, man, I ain't messing with you. I'm serious. You prior service. You've been all over, whatever. And then he opened it, and he goes, oh, that's my last one. You can't have none of this. And so I didn't even get to have a dip with him. But so yeah, no, they would let us. They gave us a flat, like on some of the courses that was really just a smoker, no brainer. Like they had this course that was a mud course where they shot over your head and stuff. They would put me to watch the ammo and stuff like that, and all these guys would be muddy and just wore out at 12 o'clock at night. And I'd be sitting over there. The old man, they call me Grandpa. So
nice.
yeah,
And so,
fun
I,
the second time.
yeah, good. And so, what made you, if you were already a preacher, what made you decide to go back enlisted into the infantry field instead of going into like the chaplain corps?
Man, it just ain't for me. I look at whatever you believe religiously, I don't really care, but I don't think Jesus is a punk. I watch people and the way they talk about stuff. The dude was a carpenter. You know what I'm saying? So he's a manly man. I went back with something I knew. My motivation was taking care of my family. My motivation was getting help for my children. The easiest and straightest path, and to get rank during that time, was the infantry. I came back in the military with almost 550 points, promotion points, and the cutoff for E6 was like 460. So I'm sitting here, it was just a shoe in. So I'm looking from a totally different vantage. I will say this, I did not count the cost because there was a lot of loss, a lot of baggage by making that decisions. the decision that I made, I can look back and say, yes or no. Well, most people would do that for their kids. Was it the right decision or the wrong decision? Don't really know. Uh, in one aspect of it, because I lost a lot of time with my kids because of the time it was. My kids still died. Uh, I came back with a lot of scars and issues that I didn't go in with. Uh, I've lost everything like 4 or 5 times and rebuilt. Uh, so was it worth it? Yeah. I mean, I have no regrets. I don't regret. I don't regret doing it. Going back in hindsight, you know, hindsight's always different, bro. Uh, so that's why I did it. But I literally went like 90 days, man. I was preaching one Sunday, packed my family up, rolled to Mississippi, flew out of Jackson, Mississippi. I was in basic training. 90 days later, I'm in the desert. We rolling people up like nobody's business. I mean, we had people over there at the fence trying to surrender before anything ever kicked off. I mean, whenever I think it was Camp Pennsylvania, whenever I was there, it was just berms, you know. A lot of that stuff that I don't know if it's still there, but, we flew into Doha, grabbed our stuff and went to a desert and slept. And they said, well, in Camp Pennsylvania, well, you look around, it was nothing. And so, uh, little shock, it's amazing what men will do for a little piece of cloth on their shoulder, saying that they've been to combat or, a little medal. It's almost like we're just grown up Boy Scouts.
And so the camp that you were at, that was out there in Kuwait before the initial push into Iraq.
Yeah, we came to Doha. When we flew, man, forever. Good Lord, man. And then we got there, went to Doha, spent about 24 hours in Doha roughly, and then got on a bus and went to Pennsylvania, I think it was. And there were several of them that we went out there, but you could definitely tell like when what we call the soft skill MOSs got there, because we were standing at the chow tent lined up, man, and we had been out there for a while. Uh, all of a sudden, man, all us dogs, you know, I had some young guys, man, they were great guys. And all of a sudden, they went, man, we turned around and there was females for the first time in it ever. And what made us mad, we were shooting the old long guns, the old, M16s and stuff like that. You had to be, and these females come walking up with M4s with 203 grenade launchers, and we was like, what in the world is going on? And so it was kind of different, but they had them all the way on the other side of the berm, wherever that was at. But we stayed in 2 or 3 different places. I can't remember the name. We stayed in tents for a while at the end, where we got our legal brief before we crossed the border and everything. But
And so in when Nate was reading off a little bit about your history and all that, you guys pushed in and you found yourself kind of like we said in the beginning. I think it was before we even started recording. Sounds like you and I were pounding sand in this at the same time around the same vicinity.
yeah, actually, we were supposed to be over there with you guys, but from what I can understand, there was kind of it was weird because we had so many people there and they were fighting over missions. If looking back, like, especially like the Air Force stuff, there wasn't enough bombing missions for everybody to get around. But from my understanding, the Marine Corps side was over there at Al Najariya. I can't remember the bridge that I'm talking about, but we hit, I think it was Operation Firebird maybe, or something like that, where we came in, we hooked around and went to Talil Airfield and hit that. And then when we hit that, you guys was over at the other side doing that. We were supposed to leave there. Our military doctrine says you don't stay but what, 5 minutes to 30 minutes on an objective. We spent the night on our first objective. And I was like, oh my God, what is going, you trained us one way. And I'm sitting here going, I was freaked out. I ain't gonna lie about it. But I mean, that was kind of funny looking back, but at the time it wasn't real funny. And we were supposed to come to you guys, but they had something about who was going to be in charge, in the upper ranks. No, I'm in charge. So I think we came up and then we bounced because they moved us fast on those thunder runs. They had never done some of the stuff we had done before with those vehicles, from my understanding.
So that bridge, the bridge in Al Nazaria, were you on the bridge on the north side of Al Nazaria?
I can't really. What we ended up doing is going up to the Euphrates, and there was another place, and the Marines took a lot of casualties, from my understanding, on that bridge. And when we bounced, and they said that they didn't need us, we went on up to I want to say Kerbala, because I was at Kerbala when the first car bomb went off, and killed like 2 or 3 guys. And so that was different, because that's the first thing that we had ever, I'd never seen anything like that. I went in, whenever I first went in, we was still training like we was going to Vietnam. Now we're not, now we got Bradley's moving from house to house in Baghdad. I mean, you're sitting here going, oh my God, what? I mean, we would literally go in, back out, and flank them with our own Bradleys.
Right.
So there was a bridge, and it was up by somewhere where we crossed the Euphrates. That my first sergeant, he was a Charlie, a Mortarman, that had a Ranger tab. And so we had this sniper that was sniping from buildings across the Euphrates at us. He said, I'm going to show y'all how to clear buildings like Israel. And dude, he lit them up, and that whole thing just imploded on that guy that was shooting at us. It was pretty, I don't know. I got a dark sense of humor. I say it was funny, but I just never heard the thing about, hey, I'm going to clear a building, and then it just imploded, basically.
Right. No, definitely sounds like you were on the southern bridge, the Euphrates bridge, and then the other one that you're talking about is Saddam Canal Bridge, the northern bridge, which is where that whole ambush that I was involved in happened. So, wow, yeah. It's always amazing to hear other things that were going on the same day or days while I was around as well too, because we only see the battlefield from our point of view, right? From our small little scope of field of view, and to get to start putting all the puzzle pieces together, hearing from other men and mainly men. It was back in 2003, so it's mainly the other men that were in that area doing their own little missions in order to gain whatever you want to call it, field superiority in Al Nazaria, or just gain that foothold, right, in order to allow the rest of the unit to push all the way north. And like you said, I mean, in those days, we were doing things. You always say the word unprecedented, right? No, we did, right? We absolutely did, because I mean, even things like I was with the Marines, and the AAVs that we use, they're an amphibious assault vehicle, right? Mainly used to do beach landings, and it's not like we haven't used them as troop carriers, but in the desert, that's all they were troop carriers, and so we definitely did a lot. It's amazing to see, like you said, those tanks rolling through the center of a city, and they make a turn, or left or right turn, and they can barely even fit down that alleyway with that big gun in front of them.
Dude, I'm telling you, the Bradley, the Bradley people go, you got the tanks, the Abrams, and then you got the tanks. I mean, the Bradleys, and you're going, man, we're running over cars left and right. And they're like, why are you doing that? We didn't have a choice, man. I mean, you didn't have a choice. I mean, what are you going to do? My biggest concern was I had to stay a little bit behind it. So whenever they shot the 25 Mike, that coated jacket that came off of it didn't get you. And then you're going, man, where's the radioactive blankets to put on these rounds that were sitting on top of them. They said, "Oh, don't worry about it. I put wool blankets down." Oh, thank you. You wonder why guys' teeth falling out, but it ain't. I'm not a doctor, but I got buddies their teeth are crumbling down. It's probably because of what we were doing back there.
Sitting on top of depleted uranium rounds.
Yeah, man. Then they tell you to get out. One day they told us get out and said, "Hey, dig fighting position." I'm like, we're in the middle of the desert. Y'all got night vision. You got all this stuff. You can see people coming for a mile. And then I'm like, this is dumb. I ain't doing it. I just was like, I ain't doing it. So, and I was a team leader. So I was like, hey guys, dig fighting positions. When they come by me, like I'm supervising, So I told my buddy, I was like, I told my E4, I'm like, we ain't doing this. And he said, what's the company commander gonna, I said, the company commander ain't making this up. He ain't telling us to do this. 15 minutes later, they said, hey, y'all be careful when you dig it. They think there might be mines around. I was like, y'all stop. I ain't doing this. This is dumb. I'm going home. And it literally happened. And people go, no, that didn't happen. Yeah. And some of the stuff, it's like I told my privates. I said, look, you know what NCOs do when you privates ain't around? It's like, what? I said, we act like privates. We act like privates. We do some dumb stuff, And so it was kind of, I don't know. My second time it was like living in a frat house for the next 8 years because when we went over the first time, you had no gloves on, man. You could handle business. You did what you needed to do. Nobody said nothing, and then later on, one of the scariest parts was whenever everything was over. They declared victory, and I had 2,000 people around me, and I still had my grenades on me. Because you're looking at these guys you're looking at the average person, and then the guy comes in, he's well fed, got a great haircut, got a passport where he's been a fruit farmer and he's been all over the world, and you're looking at him going, man, you was Republican Guard last week, but now he's like, that was kind of nerve wracking to me, but I look back at some of it and laugh now.
Yeah, I think Reagan, because of how fast you all got up to Baghdad, I think Reagan was in his head. He was thinking the same way his dad did it in Desert Storm, and he just assumed, oh, okay, it's over now, it's done.
Yeah,
two completely different wars, And,
You mean Bush?
Yeah, Bush.
Oh yeah. What did I say? Reagan?
Yeah. That's when I went in the first time in Reagan administration. So.
Yeah. I was in Desert Storm, so
okay.
right after Reagan. So I got Reagan on the brain after you mentioned him a couple times.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a lot different too, right? Because you guys went in. I think there's about 200,000 coalition forces in Iraqi freedom for that, from March to June, and so I think he just assumed that it was the same exact kind of idea that Desert Storm was a whole different thing,
They didn't know. It scared them. They moved so fast at Desert Storm. I was at Bragg. I was waiting to go, man. I was ready, and then they were like,
yeah.
Like,
well, so this is a little bit of sidetrack, but there were more people, coalition forces in Desert Storm to cross the line into Iraq and Kuwait than there were in the Battle of the Bulge. There's 697,000 crossed all at one time. So that was a lot different. There were over 3,000 main battle tanks at the same time. But so, yeah, we moved fast and got it done really quick. But he, Bush too, I don't think he understood the difference in the amount of, he made you guys do it with far less people. And I think that was why there were so many more casualties too. And I think then when y'all got to Baghdad so quick, I think he just assumed that he was thinking of the terms the way his dad did it, right? And I think he just figured, hey, I remember thinking when he said mission accomplished, because I was in training at that time, and I remember him saying that, and I was just kind of like, this is kind of weird because it doesn't seem like it's over yet.
Oh, little did he know. They know now, though, don't they? I mean,
oh yeah,
you sitting there. I was there when that female, they made a wrong turn and got lost and got taken. And I was there there was an E4 that they didn't find for a long time. They finally found his body and stuff. But it was like when they said that, I was just like, man, they didn't. Nobody had a clue, what it. They took out the whole infrastructure of the whole country, basically. Like when I was in the water plant, man, we didn't have electricity, didn't have anything. You had engineers working for $3. We found this thing was probably about I don't know 3 football fields, and in the middle and all around it, it was cache of weapons, just little berms of grenades, AK-47. We're sitting around there, and they're like, "Hey, what is this on the ground?" One of the EOD guys said, it was little plastic explosive tabs all over the ground. If you stomped on them too hard, it'd blow your foot off. And you're sitting there going, wow, man. And we had to guard that, and they would pay Iraqi civilians, doctors, whatever, couple of dollars a month to guard that where resistance wouldn't come in and get it. It was kind of good. It was nuts how it didn't seem like there was a follow-on plan on how to stabilize it and then get out. And that's really what they wanted. They wanted us to come, remove, and then them be who they are.
Yeah, because Desert Storm was kicking Iraq out of a country. You guys were going into Iraq. Were you kicking them to, right? So they didn't really plan the what next part.
Yeah, the real deal is that cat over at Fort Benning. They should have. It's just my opinion now. They put him there. He just didn't play ball, so we removed him. I mean, Gaddafi, some of these guys that give us problem, we train them.
Yeah, people had a short memory that we built up Iraq when they were enemies with Iran, right? We helped build their chemical warfare system.
When we pulled everybody out of Afghanistan and Iraq the way it happened, it really made me question, was it worth it? Because I had friends, I know people that died, like I know you guys do too, but sitting there watching the way that went down, and regardless of anybody's political views or anything like that, watching the way that went down and the people, how that was done, it was just like it made me question some of the things that I did. I don't regret things. I said that earlier. I don't regret going back in the Army. I don't regret going to fight for the country. I don't regret any of that. But I do question some things now, because was it after all those years of fighting, all those years of people being loyal to the United States, even though they wasn't of this country over there, we use a lot of assets over there, and even Americans got left, and people don't know that. They're too busy in hate.
Yeah, it's I think we're at a point in history for the United States where just Americans don't have the stomach for actual war. I think from here on out, everything that we're going to have to do is going to have to be fought as a low intensity conflict, because we don't have the stomach for it, right? So if we weren't gonna do it until it was finished, then we never should have went in that way in the first place, right? But now what we're doing, right? You look on paper, there's no wars going on, right? Yet we got people deployed all over the place because everything's being done at low intensity conflict.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good strategy too, because I mean, look what Special Forces, how well they did that first couple of months in Afghanistan, right? That thing was almost done. Dr.
I got a question for you guys. It just popped in my head just now. Would you guys, and I want to hear from everybody, would you say there's quite a difference between fighting for your country versus fighting for your government?
Somebody else go first.
Well, I was going to say, I was like, let the guest go
first. I actually like this question. I really do. and this is obviously just my own point of view, my humble opinion, whatever the fuck you want to call it, right?
Yeah.
So the way you propose it that way, Doc, now I see it three different ways. I used to see it two different ways. Fighting for the survival of each other to the left and right of us, right? And or fighting for our country. Now you propose it. Do I see a difference between fighting for our government and fighting for our country? And now for me, it's and or fighting for the survival of each other. For me personally, I think all three of them have a different meaning. I definitely do believe that I was sent overseas to do the government's work. Now, let's say the bombs came, hit the Twin Towers, and now all of a sudden we have an invading force on American soil. Then I would feel like I truly fought and served to fight for the liberties that we have, the freedoms that we have, and for the survival of the American citizen. So I feel like I was sent over to Iraq and Afghanistan to fight a political war for a government. Now, when I was boots on ground and bullets were flying towards me and my brothers and sisters, I felt that at that moment in time, I was fighting for the survival of us and for us to get home. I hope that's clear.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
That made a lot of sense. I like the way you worded that because you get recruiters are the best salesmen in the world. So they sell you on God and country and family. You go for God, country, and it's unique how they start you out. We want you to have a wife. We put her in a duffel bag. We give you everything you need. So even with that, they target 17 to 22-year-old kids, and I think a male's brain's not fully developed until about 22 or 23, so they can sell them a bill of goods, you know. And so when you're that age, uh, you do that. So whenever I went over, even at 31, whenever I went over there, I was fighting for God and country. Now my order is God, family, then everything else below that. You know,
Yeah.
I can't look at what we did now. Whenever I was over there, it's about survival, man. That's one of the greatest accomplishments I feel. All my guys come home. Period. End of story. You know, all my equipment came home. End of story. Uh, didn't get a bunch of awards. Didn't get you know, all of that. Didn't care because I was alive. I told my guys when we walked in, I said, "Look, this is what's going to happen. When in doubt, kill everything. Just kill everything. Because I'd rather be uh, judged by 12 than carried by 6. Just straight up, you know." And so that's the way I went in, and we came home. And so that was my main goal then. Looking back now, uh, I think most wars are driven by money, if not all. You know, uh, I don't see the point. Uh, what did they have anything to do with? There's always going to be people that hate America. Period. We can find a reason to fight. I mean, they, if I ain't mistaken, on the Saddam never ever abided by the treaty that he signed and the UN actions from Desert Storm.
That's
He
correct.
never missed. He never got. So we could the UN, in my opinion, should have went in and did stuff, but they're not going to it because we're the policemen of the world at the time and still are sometimes, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. When it comes to Doc Barry's question, the problem we have is so Congress works for the people and the military works for the people. But when Congress fails, right, when politics doesn't work, then you throw your hands in the air and then you go, okay, I'm frustrated, and you throw the military in. The military is supposed to then accomplish what politics couldn't do. The problem is we now have this history since since Vietnam. where the politicians think that they still get to have an opinion about how it happens, and so they get in the way. They're making money and investing on what they know is going to happen, and it's not illegal for some reason. So while we're there fighting for the American people, I don't know if I ever knew anybody who said, yeah, I feel like I'm fighting for the government, right? But we know who's pulling the strings, right? We know who's putting the limitations and telling us what we can and can't do and messing with the rules of engagement and stuff like that. But yeah, and I absolutely agree with both you gentlemen that, yeah, but once you get there and now you're doing it, right, in the minutia level, yeah, you're not on patrol thinking about the American people, right?
No.
When you're in combat ops, you're thinking about you and everybody around you.
I got dysentery.
Yeah.
That's my next point. I mean,
Yeah, not to bust any of the American population's bubble, but yeah, sorry guys, like you're far away from, what I'm saying, and that's why maybe sometimes, like, do I know how to I guess answer a question for sure, but every time it's like, oh, thank you so much for my freedom. Like, I would much rather someone say, hey, thank you for your service, and I'm like, yeah, cool, that's what I signed up to do. But when like, thank you so much for my freedoms, I unless it's a close friend, like I'm usually like, in my mind, I'm like, I didn't fight for your fucking freedoms, man. Like, like we gotta thank people back in the Civil War eras for that. You know what I'm saying? We gotta, but I think, and let me ask y'all gentlemen this: do you think that maybe our generation that went into, and let's lump both of the Desert Storm and GWOT together, right? So let's do you think that a lot of us that joined and went into those conflicts, especially the 20-year GWOT war, right? We went in because I found myself and a lot of my friends talking about, just kind of like you said, Lonnie, this isn't the military that I thought I joined. The ideology, right, of what it is to serve this nation, and the ideology that of what this nation is built upon, right? Freedoms, democracy, equality, all of that stuff, right? Do you feel that we, if you want to call it a brainwash, right, that we were trained to think that way? Because let's be honest, World War II, Korean War, World War I really wasn't in the existence of humanity, right? Or the existence of a nation. Those wars really weren't that far away. We still had veterans, World War I veterans alive when we were going into, especially y'all gentlemen that went into Desert Storm, right? And then when I went into Iraq and Afghanistan in 2003, we still had some of those service members or veterans alive. We still have some World War II veterans alive that when I look back and when we talk about thank you for serving for our freedoms, I know I said Civil War, but when I look back, to me, like the World War era veterans kind of were defending the freedoms of not just America, right? But of a lot of different countries. And so I think maybe it just because, like I said, maybe we're so close to them still, right? A lot of them were our great grandparents or our grandparent, right? That maybe that ideology of what America has stood for so many years before, I'm gonna call it what it is, before the fucking politics of GWOT came around, right? And now, like you said, Mr. Lonnie, we look back now 25 years later after the global war on terror started, and now we're starting to see that, hey, you know what? What we got sent in there for was all fucking, I won't say all lies, but a lot of it.
Well,
so do you think that maybe that has a lot to do or something to do with how we felt we were going into, like I said, the ideology of what we stood for as an American country, and then what kind of we might feel has transpired now, what reality has brought to light?
Man, I sit here and I understand exactly what you're saying, because whenever I say we were sold on the ideal of God and country and stuff like that, what I mean really is kind of, you jog me on the way you're putting it, because I remember looking at World War II veterans. I had a guy that was from 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 the Korean War that pinned my airborne wings on me, right? So it's a whole different vibe. When people walked in, they gave them respect because you got the greatest generation. You have all these guys that I knew a guy that got married. 2 days later, he shipped off and didn't see his wife for 2 years, and they're still married, like, and they're old. There's a guy in my church that he calls it the toy. He was there, Marine. He's 101 years old or 100 years old. He was there when they dropped the bomb, And so when you look at them fighting against Germany or whoever it was, they were literally going to take off if Hitler wouldn't have dropped the jet engine, this whole thing could have been turned around. When you do your study and your research, we took all his engineers, did the jet engine, and it propelled us light years ahead of everybody else. If history,
he got fascinated with rockets for some reason.
Hey, God love him. Hey, go with God. I'm glad, because we're in a whole lot better place because of it. But I'm sitting here looking, and I was raised up around that. So I think whenever I went in, that's what I was still going for. But look, the guys that was in Vietnam, they didn't get treated that way. They didn't get treated. And then all of a sudden, here we are, and we're going, okay, God and country, our freedoms or whatever. But I mean, let's face it. In what lifetime between all of us do we think Iraq at any point in time could attack us and actually win? Not saying there couldn't, there's miracles that happen, but I mean, they're going to do certain things that agitate us and take out 2,000 people, or they might help fund somebody to take out a Navy ship or something. But on a large scale, you're sitting here because I grew up in the Cold War. Man, I still believe there's communists out there. There are a bunch of commies out there. And everybody that was against America was a commie. I didn't care who they were. You know what I'm saying? So
better dead than red.
Yeah. So now looking back, I'm going, I go, was I really fighting for God and country? But what I realized early on is this, and I think this is why I don't have some trouble, is because I volunteered to fight in a dictatorship for democracy. And people don't understand that. So I was able to separate. Whenever I went in, I was in a dictatorship fighting for democracy. And so I never had a problem with any president while I was under there. I'm not saying I agreed with them, but I followed orders. Right. And that's what you do. Yeah. Orders, you handle your mission, and at the end of the day, that guy to the left and right is the only one that matters. I didn't take pictures across the board. I didn't take anything across the border. I took my name tag, my dog tags, and my guys, and that was it. Period.
Yeah, there's the Marine Corps side, we say God, country, and Corps, but there's a pragmatism to it, right? Because you've got to motivate people in one way or another, and you don't know exactly how you're going to use them, right? So you rally them around God, country, and Corps, and then whatever happens is what happens. Because if you try to recruit people based off of, hey, well, here's the current climate, and this is what's wrong or what's right, and you try to sell everybody on the politics, well, then how do you get people to go fight for that, right? Because everybody's going to have different opinions. So it's not a pragmatic way of doing it. And something else you said, I was glad you brought up World War II, because I'm surprised the number of people that still don't have any idea that everything that we were doing in World War II and everything that we're still doing today is all fallout from World War I. At the end of World War I, letting Russia take what they wanted and letting the UK decide how to divvy up the Middle East, that's how we ended up in World War II. And then it just continued on to where we're at now. A lot of people don't realize the people that run Iran are not Persian. They were transplanted out of the Arabian Peninsula. They were Sunnis that were put up in there to go run a Shiite country. And the same thing, the guy that just got kicked out of Syria, right? He wasn't an Alawite. He's not from there. Right? It's a Hashemite kingdom, right? He was brought in and put there also. And all this stuff comes from the fall of the Ottoman Empire that rolled into World War I, World War II, and we're still dealing with the fallout of it. And
Yeah. So I'm of old school, man. This is what I believe. When we beat the pants off Germany, should have planted a flag. It's ours. Because now we have taken care of them all these years, taking care of Japan, whoever. We've always destroyed them, and then we rebuild them, KBR, whoever, and we go through there and we rebuild them, and I'm like, what, why? Why that I understand why on one aspect of it, but on the other aspect of it, I'm sitting here going, we're the only country that's self-sufficient. We really are the only country that can. We don't need anything from anybody else, and we can make do. And people are. I mean, our people. Technology has dumbed us down so much that people don't even. Just like some of the things that's going on in the current events with what the current administration is posing on other countries. You're sitting here and you're going,
yeah, so that's a good example. Regardless of what you think is right or wrong,
yeah,
the fact that it is having a worldwide effect shows you that, like you said, that we're still on top of the hill, and everybody else is dependent on us. Because if that wasn't the case, they could care less.
why are we traveling all this way? Why you travel all this way to get here? And I understand, man. I'm gonna do what I got to do for me and my family, just like any other man would. I don't care if you, what country, where you from. Most men, they'll do whatever they got to do for their family, and I make no bones about that. But I promise you, if I go to another country, I'm not trying to change it into the country I just fled because I can't eat. You know,
Yeah,
we're loved to be hated, but we're doing something right. We're not doing everything right. I ain't that naive, but at the same time, it's like I'm not changing. I will never change the way I live. If God don't change me, I ain't changing. I'm not. I whenever I went through basic training in 1989, there was about 20 things I had to do to graduate basic. Whenever I was a drill sergeant in '08, before I got out, there was 214 tasks that had to be done by a private to be able to graduate basic training, and it's only
well,
increased. I mean, they gave me I didn't have no red dot sight. Man, when you
yeah,
got labeled a Hawkeye, it's because you was iron sights, baby. You was hitting whatever. Now you got to qualify with red dot, the night shoot, all that. And I'm like, what in the world's going on? Then when you get over there, you're going, oh my God. Like I remember
yeah,
in a foxhole covering my eye, because they were shooting flares up. So it's
yeah.
just the way you do it. If there's a nuclear blast, face forward and lay flat down. And I'm like, are you kidding? We're not going to be here. It don't matter where you lay. Just do it. Okay, I did
Yeah,
it
I'm like,
the whole
I
time.
was trying to explain to one of the young guys what it was like to shoot at 500 yards with iron sights, and they're like, "What?" And
Yeah.
like,
And
and they're qualifying at 100 yards in some, for I'm not sure which situations or which services, but they were talking about how hard 100 yards were, and I'm like, and you've got optics. I'm like, what? What's happening?
problem. That's the problem right there. Like I took a course with the asymmetric warfare group on shooting, and it's a lot of CAD guys, and retired, and they would come through, and they were showing people how to shoot 500 yards plus. And the dude looked at me, and I never will forget it. And I apply this to my whole life now. And this was over 20 years ago. He said, Lonnie, he said, there's no advanced shooting techniques. There are no advanced shooting techniques. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, everybody wants us to teach advanced techniques. He said, there's no advanced techniques. He said, there's only the basics. He said, where you shoot 30,000 to 40,000 rounds a month, I shoot 150,000 rounds. He said, I practice the basics over and over and over. And because I do that, I become very smooth and it's second nature. And he said, so wherever you go, whatever you do, if you do the basics and you master the basics, there's no advance anything. And I sat back and I think about that a lot. And I thought, man, that makes a lot of sense whenever I start uh, kind of freaking out or not sleeping well and having trouble in family. I go back to the basic. what's wrong with me? What am I doing wrong? What am I? Is it?
Yeah.
Why am I not happy? What is it? Because things don't make you happy. They
Right.
make you comfortable, but they don't necessarily make you happy. And so I find this last couple of 6 months or so, and I know I'm hitting a rabbit trail. Sorry, but it was like
Right.
I was thinking, and I got really uh, down. There's certain times of the year from deaths and all of this stuff that happen. I got to thinking, there's what can I do? What I need to do? And it was like spiritually, mentally, physically. I've lost about 70 pounds in the last 8 months, and I was
Oh,
three,
wow.
and I'm down to I was 300 pounds. I'm right at 228, 225 now. I'm trying to get down to 200, and it just changed my whole perspective on some stuff because uh, the strong mindset that I once had, I didn't have the will. I just, what's the point? What's the point for this? What's the point for that? But, I got a 13-year-old daughter, you know,
Yeah.
and maybe that's the point. I got a wife that's 7 years younger than me. Maybe that's the point. Maybe I don't need to do it for them. I just need to do it for me because I'm finding out now it's okay for me to enjoy some stuff. It's okay for me to have some things, and where we get in that mindset of working, and because of what we've been through, it's always about the greater good. It's always about somebody else. In the military, it's about your brother to the left and right of you, and when you come out, it's always about somebody else, and so therefore I get depleted. And uh,
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense. I just kind of
No, it does because you said words that I recently have said quite often, and I think both of the docs have heard me say that when people would say, "Hey, well, why don't you just get up and go for a walk, man, and do something and get the endorphins going?" And they didn't understand because in my head I was saying that I was saying those exact words. Why? What's the point? And it wasn't until I answered myself one day back in May this past year, and I realized the point is because I don't want to die yet, right?
yeah,
And I finally found the very root reason for me that worked of what's the point? The point is I don't want to die yet, so therefore I have to do something, and that's what got me. I was in my house 24/7 except to go to church on Sunday for an hour, and then I would come right back home and I would stay until the next Sunday. And finally, as I started going to a veteran support group meeting and starting to feel like I was alive because the other vets there had me laughing my ass off more. I would laugh more in that 1 hour than I did the entire year before. And so I started coming back and I was slowly coming back to life. And then I started joining small groups at my church. And then I started running small groups, and it all for me, because I couldn't see the way out from those exact words. What's the point? Why bother? And I've raised 12 kids, but now I'm empty nest, right? So I was like, I'm not doing it for a wife. I'm not because I'm not married, and I'm not doing it for kids anymore. And I couldn't figure it out. And then when it got down to it, I realized one day, and back in May, I'm like, I'm not going to make it. And that's when I came to realization. But I want to make it still. And
yeah, but
that's
like
yeah. Go ahead.
I never wanted to. I didn't hang around veterans because I didn't want to remember. Because you think about it, when's
Yeah.
the last time we've been in a 20-year war, 25-year war? You know what I'm saying? So everybody that's coming back, you're going, man, I don't want to talk about that crap. It took me so many years to suppress it, right? And so for me, I would have these. So in 1 year, so it started like January. I don't know the exact date. This is 1 year. My godmother died. A month later, my dad died. 2 weeks later, my mother died. About 3 weeks later, one of my best friends died. 6 months later, uh, my 15-year-old died.
Man.
And so that was 1 year. Now, in that year, I had, so, military drinks, right? And so I didn't realize how much I drank until I was at a civilian's house and we was drinking. I showed up with a case of beer and a liter of vodka. And they was like, "Hey, thanks for bringing drinks." I was like, "I didn't bring nobody drinks." I was drinking a case of beer a day, 2/5 on the weekend with my case of beer. And it's like, "You drink a lot." I'm like, "Really? This is like a normal, because we work hard, play hard. That was everybody's motto." And so I had some friends start dying, and on top of that, the VA had me on 22 different medicines at one
Oh,
time. And so
wow.
I'm just walking, living on a Harley, doing my thing, right? And so me and my wife get together. I really believe that, I believe if I wouldn't have got with my wife whenever I did, within a year, I'd be dead of that time. And so one day it hit me. Everything starts with a choice, it starts with a thought, I believe. And I told her, I said, it ain't good for me to sit at home and do nothing. And she was going to work, and all I could hear is my dad saying, "Man ain't no man, he don't work." I had an income coming in, but I wasn't doing nothing productive. And went and poured 21 pills down the drain, except for blood pressure medicine. Quit drinking cold turkey. Uh, didn't drink for anything for over 3 years, and quit doing any other stuff that I might be doing that I won't mention here. Uh, and then she said, I said, I got to do something. She said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to be a process operator. That was on a Thursday. Friday, I went and registered in college. Monday, I started, and I did a 2-year program in about 14 months. And I took 18 to 22 hours credit, never been in college form like that. And I went back to school. Then I went to work as a chemical operator, making fuel and soap and all that kind of stuff. And then that year hit. So in the middle of all that death, I just bought my first house and was remodeling it. I just started a new job, been on it less 6 months, and then all these deaths. And then so I'm sitting there and I'm walking around in this fog. I'm at work whenever I get the call on my. I just I'd been off of work for my dad's funeral, went back to work. First day I'm back at work, my brother calls me. He goes, "Hey, mom just died." I'm like, you know. Then my son died. But whenever I got to looking at stuff between December the 19th and March was even though it was at the end of the year, my youngest son died. Starting December 19th, deaths, boom, boom. Each month was and it was immediate family. It was like people that I grew up with and stayed in their house and stuff like this. And so what I ended up having to do is by knowing that, uh, I switched from being basically an alcoholic to being a workaholic. And so what happened was I just started working. And so now the way things go is I'm able to, because I know the timelines of the trauma, is I'm able to prepare for it and it does not affect me the same. It's not that I don't miss people. It's not that it don't hurt. It's just that I'm able to cope
Right.
with certain events better. It's a better way for me to cope. So I trended my life and I started looking whenever I was depressed. Why am I depressed today? Why am I this? Why am I that? And I charted it. I literally charted it. And then whenever I would come in, like this year, it didn't affect me like it did. Now, what happened was I remember the first time I forgot my son the day he died. I remembered it 3 days later and I felt guilty. And there was a whole set of problems. What's up? Go ahead, Doc. I see.
During during this period of all of these losses so close together, what did you learn about yourself?
I think it goes back to the major thing that I've learned in life is, and I'm going to use me specifically, is I believe it taught me that for my life, God's in control. No matter what, whether it's good, bad, or whatever. But it also taught me that I'm more mentally stronger than what I thought I was, where I don't feel that some of the people that I see now growing up, young men, feel like they're fragile. there's a certain hardness. There's a scripture in the Bible that says, I was going through a rough time when my son died, and the guy looked at me and he goes, man, I've never met anybody lost two children. You know, I don't even know how to talk to you. He said, but this is what comes to mind. Endure hardness as a good soldier. And so whenever I started pondering on that scripture in the Bible, and I was thinking about it, what I learned is sometimes life just sucks, and it's going to suck. But I learned the most about me during the suck. You know, we have a saying, embrace the suck. You know what I'm saying? And so
Yeah.
My mind and my belief system and my support system is stronger than it's ever been. My mind during that time, I was walking in a fog. I already had all the answers. I didn't want, most grown men, most real men, they don't want sympathy. They don't mind empathy. I just want somebody to be,
Right.
you know, I want somebody to be real with me. And so whenever I was walking through that, I didn't really have anybody that was real. I had, you know, man, I know what you, that was the thing that I hated most. Man, I know what you're going through. Really? How many kids you got that died? How many, just the reaction or that time frame. Matter of fact, I went to counseling one time for it, and the lady looked at me. She said, most people went through what you went through, be hanging from a rafter. I didn't go back, but she was right. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
I, there's an inner strength and a place that you go. I learned how to self preservation, I guess. I don't really know how to say it. I learned self preservation, and it was okay to do whatever I needed to do just to make it through it. Because looking back, people say, how did you make it? And I was like, man, God and my wife. You know, because when you're just sitting there, when you're just sitting here like this and you're eating or not even thinking about nothing, and you just start squalling and crying, and I mean, how many times you cry in the military? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's a sign of
Right.
weakness. That's a sign, but it really it's a sign of strength. So one of the things that I learned during that time of my son's death or their deaths, because 3 years later my oldest son died, in the same time frame. It's all in the same time frame. December 19th, January 25th. My godmother died in January
Oh,
too. January 25th, my oldest son died 3 or 4 years later. So from that time, I'm dealing with these deaths, and I'm sitting here going, uh, I thought I knew what strength was, to answer your question pointedly. I thought I knew what strength was because of all the things I did, and I was a masculine man. But what true strength was watching my boys endure disease. And if you ever get a chance, go to a children's hospital where they're terminal. And unless they're really, really having a bad day, they're all smiling.
yeah.
They're all in
I
life. And so I was able to witness true strength through the adversity of my boys and the way they handled it. So that's what I learned, Doc, is what true strength looks like.
yeah. Sorry you had that you had to go through so much, especially all at one time, brother. That's
Yeah.
and I'm not. I don't want to seem like I'm piling on, but I want you to understand. I understand. I'm familiar with some of it because I lost a daughter a year and a half ago, and she was she was in her 20s. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and I think the only reason why I made it is like you said, it was my for me it was my faith in God.
Yeah.
Without that, I'm not sure what I'd have done. And I still, like you said, like sometimes a song comes on and I feel her presence and
Mhm,
the song reminds me of her, and I just come apart like it happened yesterday.
mhm.
So I get that, and true, like you said. Fortunately, nobody at my church ever tried to show sympathy. They were all empathetic.
Yeah.
They would look right at me, and they said, I you could see them. They would open their mouth, and nothing was coming out, and they're like, I don't know what to say. I'm like, that's all right. That's what you just said was perfect. You
Yeah.
know?
And man, the thing is, it doesn't matter how a child dies. Okay. And
Yeah.
it doesn't matter how your daughter died. It doesn't matter how my children died. They were our children, and we're not meant to outlive them, in my opinion. And
Yeah,
so
Yeah.
that's
it is what it is. Okay. So I can look at you and say, you do understand what I went through because you lost a child. A lot of people try to, it's like, oh, I didn't do anything but robbed a car. That guy murdered someone. It's no, that's in my opinion.
yeah.
Now, my heart goes to you because I remember the first year, the first going through. And I can tell you this, if you ever need to talk, you get my number, you call me because you got the friends that are 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock friends, and you got 6 a.m. friends. And the real thing is I've walked that path and
Yeah.
there's no way around it. I ain't gonna sugarcoat it. It sucks because I'll sit here. It don't happen to me as much now because
Right.
I cope with it different ways. But I tell you what, man, whenever I was at the year mark, I'd just be sitting there having a great day and that's okay. And at the end of the day, the older you get, it's amazing how you don't care what people think about you anymore. Because I don't have anything to prove, I did
Yeah.
everything. I did everything I wanted to do. Did I have failures? Yeah. I told a guy, yeah, man, I failed. I never got my long tab. Well, you didn't fail. It just went, no, I failed. It's okay to fail. We make
Mhm.
a big thing that it's not okay to fail. I failed. I didn't do what it
Yeah.
took. It fell on me. You can blame it on the injury, but if I'd have been out there walking barefoot like Uncle Pat was on the asphalt, maybe my feet wouldn't have broke. I don't know. I just know that I believe that I could have always did more. And so
Yeah.
now, go ahead, man.
What sucks is when you fail and you don't learn anything from it.
Yeah, man, the height of insanity. Keep doing the
Yeah.
same crap and and don't change anything. So just know I'm open, man. Call me
Yeah.
anytime. I drive
Definitely.
a truck, by the way, so I got a lot of time. I still hide because I'm in a truck. My boss is 2,000 miles away. He lives up in New Jersey, and so I'm
Yeah.
down in Texas. It's like, you wanna you wanna go get no, man. I get to drive, man. I get to see scenery. I'm not cooped up in a plant, and if I don't want to talk to somebody, I don't answer the phone. They don't know I'm not busy,
Yeah.
and so that's how I hide. You know? Just
I get it, man.
honest.
Uh, I will. And I have you in mind for something else that I'm going to be doing in the near future anyway. So, because there's not a lot of vets who are very open believers and open about how their faith plays a role in their life, and something I've been working on for a while. So this won't be the last time you hear from me.
Yeah. Man, listen. I had a guy ask me, and I don't know if I can say this, so y'all just stop me or whatever.
Yeah,
He
sure.
asked me, he tried to bait me in something. He goes, what do you think about gay marriage? I said, I don't. So what do you mean? I said, I don't think about it. He said, well, what do you think? Uh, are you for it or against it? I said, are you asking me as an American or as a Christian? And he just looked at me and said, I ain't never had anybody. Listen, I don't care what you do in your household. If you ain't blowing somebody up and you ain't hurting women and children, I don't care. I fought for your right to do whatever you wanted to do. That's your right as an American to do whatever. As a Christian, I think it's wrong. So I have to divide some of these stuff because I don't, I'm not, my belief is I don't care what you do as long as you ain't hurting nobody. That's,
Yeah.
you know what
I
I'm
try
saying?
to remind people, like I'm just glad that nobody wants to stack up my sins and
Bro,
start digging into what sins that I do and start judging me on that, right? So
you know, from my childhood of getting beat down, from going through the murder trial. You know, the thing with that murder trial, to jump back a little bit, that guy that got murdered, I had 3 guys that I felt like, you remember as a young man, you remember that guy that actually you felt like listened to you as a young man.
Yeah.
So that guy was the first one. The other guy was the principal. The principal got accused of the murder. And then,
Oh, wow.
yeah. And so and then there was the other coach. There was another coach there. He was 23 years old, 22 years old. That was his first job as a coach, just graduated college.
Wow.
And so 3 of your mentors that you think that's listed to you are gone in a flash, right?
Yeah.
Then you fast forward and then you go into the Army. And then you have this stuff, and then you go through all this other trauma. And now I'm sitting here and I'm going, man, it was a lot. And what I try not to do is I look at people and I try not to go. I think you hit it on. I'm not good with names. I just know faces. But somebody hit a while ago and said, try not to compare problems. It's really not your problems, your problems. Whatever you're going through, that's major for you. You can't compare what I went through because it was major for me. So it ain't a competition whose life sucked the most. You know what I'm saying? It's what are we going to do to help each other now that we're out to get to the next level? And that's,
we've
go ahead.
said that a lot on this podcast. We say whatever the worst thing that's ever happened to you is still the worst thing that happened to you. It doesn't matter if it was better, worse, or better than somebody else's.
Yeah. I mean, some of us right now, man, where I'm at in life, I'm sitting here. It's kind of neat having a 13-year-old at this age. The gene pool of the male population, and it don't look good from where I'm. And I'm in the deep South, So I want somebody that can take care of her, that I trust, But at the end of the day, I told her, I said, look, we're in a different time. So we're in a different time. I said, here's what Daddy wants you to do. So I'm going to do my best. You're going to be a lady, but I'm going to train you to fight like a man. I want you to go to college, trade school, whatever. I want you to get an education. Daddy don't care if you're going to be a plumber, as long as you can take care of yourself. If you find that masculine man that still believes traditional values, so to speak, and can take care of you, so be it. But don't marry him until you get your degree. Don't marry him until you become what you want to do, because there's just, when you start biting at that apple, I said, the first year, I ran around my house naked whenever I was married for the first year. And now that I get older, I like just flip flops. I ain't gonna lie. I just go get my pool, chill out. And I'm sitting here going, things are going to happen and you're going to pay the price for it because you're the parent of children, period. So get what you need to get and then do what you need to do. And, we go to a conservative church, and she told me the other day, she's like, I want to get back in jujitsu. So it's kind of funny. I told her, it's kind of funny. My pastor was like, we was talking. I was like, look, man, I'm going to be honest with you. I heard there's some bullying going on. And I teach my daughter different. And I said, so if they start bullying her, she's going to knock their teeth out. Literally.
Right.
Kind of
I'm like, is it bullying? Is it bullying, or is she reacting?
Yeah. It's like, and I told her, I said, and I told him, I said, I want to teach her how to, here pretty soon, if it's go get some weapons, I want to teach them how to clear houses and give them a good shooting, because it ain't getting any better, and people say what they want. Now you can come in the house, and if they turn their back, but I told her, I said, look, they should be alive, it'll be okay. And I didn't know this, but the statistic is, if your house gets invaded, do you know who ends up shooting the perpetrators? The children. The children.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've been seeing those numbers a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, because
but some of us keep things close by. So,
man, I got things everywhere. But it's like, one of the things that I did do, I just stopped a couple of years ago. I haven't felt the need to carry anymore.
I've heard a lot of guys been saying that a lot lately. A lot of guys in my church too.
And so I couldn't leave. Now, what was weird about that? I've only
Yeah.
shot one time since '08. I've only shot my weapon one time since '08, but I carried it almost every day.
Well, there's something too. I was talking to the guys at the church who said, "Hey, I don't feel like I need to carry anymore," and I told them, I was like, "Well, you know what?" I said, "Even when I was in the military, I didn't carry because I felt like having a gun would keep me from getting hurt. My whole purpose of carrying a weapon was to protect other people by eliminating the threat." And so, like, even when I go to small groups, especially because a lot of my small groups seem to be mostly women, and some of the stuff that's been happening in churches lately, right?
Yeah.
I open carry, but I was explaining, I'm like, no, I'm not open carry because I'm worried about getting shot, and I'm not open carrying because I'm hoping that somebody comes through the door so I can eliminate it. I'm open carrying because if something happens and it looks like that other people are going to get hurt, that's why I open. That's why I carry.
The problem is, I understand that, but the fact of statistically proven, most people without proper training and even really good shots, I can close the distance between 20 to 30 feet on you and use my knife on you quicker than anybody can pull and effectively engage a target. So
Yep.
another thing that I worry about is I do worry about open carry. And the reason why it has nothing to do with rights. But a lot of people that are carrying weapons that they have no idea how to use, they have no training on it,
Yeah.
and they have a gun that would kill a freaking elephant. And you're going,
Yeah.
it's over. And so it's like
Last week.
I told my wife the other day, I said, if something goes on in our church, get on the floor and crawl out, because if you're going to get killed, it's going to be by somebody you know, because everybody in Texas carries. And they're just like, I'll do this. And the real thing is, most of them's going to freeze up. And I
Right.
was sitting in church one day. I'm sitting in church. I'm with my wife. Church holds about 600 people, right? I
Yeah.
hear something. I'm paying attention. Guys preaching. I hear something. I immediately get up and I take off running. I'm about midway down on the far left side. I take off running. I run around the back of the church and I'm scanning. And all the preacher sees is this little fat dude running, right? And I'm running and I'm standing and I see a group of people. And whenever I bust through the people, there's a 2-year-old boy choking to death on a piece of candy.
Oh, yeah.
People standing around. I grab it from the mother, hit it on the back, clear his airway, pick him up. He screams at me. I hand him back to the mother and I walk out. So anybody been like what we've done, you get that adrenaline, you handle a situation, you go off in the back and break down, whatever.
Yep. Cortisol dump.
Yeah. This lady walks out. What was unique about the whole thing? Not what I did. What I got from that whole experience there. This lady walked out and she said, "How did you do that?" I said, "Do what?" I said, "That's just stuff we've done in the military. It's everyday thing." She said, "I'm an ER nurse. I work in the ER for the last 15 years and I froze. I couldn't know." I said, "The difference between you and me is you've only functioned in a controlled environment. Even though you've seen a lot of trauma, even though everything's controlled, we have been trained and we react. We see things that people don't see, and we've never been. A lot of people don't know this. I think you probably would. When people come back from war situations, There's seven stages. It's like death. There's 7 stages of grief. There's 7 stages that you got to go through to get back to what your normal was. And if you never do it, you'll never be the same. And so when I tell people I'm broke, "Oh no, you're not broke. You're just no, I'm broke, dude. I'm broke. I don't fit in
Yeah.
here." You know,
Yeah. They don't know that when
fit in.
they don't know that when you saw that kid, it wasn't by chance, right? If I know you, like most vets, you're hyper vigilant, so you're always scanning to see what's happening waiting for something to happen, and then when something happened, you were ready.
Yeah, I mean, my wife turned to say something to me when I was gone, and it's not a, it's like it's muscle memory, I guess is the only way I could say it. I mean, it's like, like your actions that you did in Al Nazarene and all that stuff. I guarantee you, if a bad trauma thing happened, it would all. And I don't know what field you guys work in now, or even if you work, but I know for me, there's a lot of times. I had a halon bottle go off in a place the other day, man, and whenever it went off, I hit the ground. I was about 200 meters away. I done rolled my little fat butt across the parking lot, laying up under a thing, and I was in a prone position with no weapon. And they was like, "Where'd Riley go? I didn't know you could move that fast." Dude, some of the stuff just happens. Was it?
Yeah.
Now I could laugh at it now. Used to I have to take off, but now I laugh at it. I think it's kind of funny. I'm like, man, my buddy Rodney. We was in a store one day, and somebody dropped a book. You remember in school when they take a book, just slam it.
Oh, yeah.
Well, this is like 10 years ago, man. Somebody did that. I did a 360. I was in a ninja stance, and Rodney was on the other side, and he didn't move. He just laughed. Rodney played in the NFL, and he was like, he just was kind of looking, and he had this little smirk. I said, Rodney. He goes, yeah. I said, you see that? He goes, yeah. I said, it's okay to laugh, and he started laughing. He had never seen it before, and I gotta laugh at some of the stuff I do, or I go crazy, bro. I mean, it's like,
Yeah,
Absolutely, absolutely.
yeah. Man.
man, I
Right.
Oh well,
stuff in
I feel like we could go on forever, man.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing, and we're about 10 minutes past our cutoff. So say this last minute if anyone has anything last minute things to say, or Mr. Riley, if you have any last minute stuff you wanted to bring up.
man, I appreciate y'all letting me come on. I'd like to do it again.
Absolutely.
I really,
Yeah.
this was a great learning experience for me. I don't feel, I mean, I know we talked about stuff, but I don't feel like I really scraped. Uh, you have your idea and perception of what it's going to be like, and what you're going to do, and then this was just, uh, this is easy. I
Good.
Yeah.
feel ease for the first time talking to people about this, and even though there's a, y'all know, man, I could talk to you. I don't even know anything about you except from what I read, because you and Doc's just been listening, and we just been kind of talking, and you added in, but it was really easy. I appreciate you guys letting me come on. Uh, I'm really, I hope that we can maintain some type of relationship other
Absolutely.
than this. But I would,
Yeah.
if you guys have anything, one of the things that I know that young men are lacking is mentors. And in what I'm
Yeah.
trying to pursue right now, man, I could use some good mentors to help me, point me in the right direction. I don't want no handouts, but I would take a hand up if anybody's got any advice or that could help me pursue this.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
we very openly share our contact information with our guests, and we've had guests call us up, and they'll call Doc Barry and and say, "Hey, I got this situation," and Doc will send them to either he'll take care of it, or he'll be like, "Hey, you need to talk to Luis, or you need to talk to Nate," and then the next thing you know, we're talking to somebody one on one that we haven't seen since they were a guest a year or two earlier. So yeah, definitely. But you know what I've been telling people lately is I know you now, and I'm never gonna not know you. It
Yeah,
doesn't
That's
matter
right.
it doesn't matter how long we've talked since we talked. I know you now.
yeah, man.
So
Thank
yeah, definitely. And
Thanks for coming. Hey, thanks for coming on with us. We appreciate it.
heck
Absolutely.
yeah,
And to our audience members, I've been keeping track on our live YouTube feed. To our audience members, thank you so much for sticking with us the whole time. We really appreciate you being here with us this evening, and hope to see you again next week, or in 2 weeks, I should say.
heck yeah. Oh yeah,
All right.
All
yeah,
right.
and feel free to sign up again, Lonnie, for whenever you feel like doing it.
Man, look, I got a place I'm gonna go. I got an invitation to go speak at a veterans fishing tournament thing. up in Georgia. I'm going to do that. I got a friend, y'all need to look him up, named Cedric King. We was airborne
All right.
together. He got his legs blown off. He speaks to like Boston Red Sox. He speaks to all these places, and that's all he does now. And I talked to him. He's kind of helping me out a little bit. But man, no matter how big, how small, whatever, if y'all got any places where I can go speak and just, you know, spread this or what we're doing and try to help people, I really would appreciate it. You know,
Yeah.
there's some things I got to do to provide for my family, but other than that, man, I'm fixing to start hitting it hard because we don't have a lot of time, man. I got more days behind me than I do ahead of me, I feel.
That's
So,
right.
you know, it's not how it's not the quantity, it's the quality.
Yep.
And so
That's right.
Yeah.
that's what I'm gonna focus on here for the rest of my time on this earth.
Yeah. Amen, man.
So
All righty.
All right, gentlemen. Well, y'all have a good evening.
yes,
All
sir.
right. Yep. You too.
All right, we're stopped. And
Okay.
All right. So we're not recording now. This is just us.
Just
and everyone's good. Obviously, Nate, you know what's up with your stuff, so everyone's gonna log off. Well,
Yeah.
gentlemen,
Hey, something that I found out part of what the problem has been in the past. So if you're logged in and it's uploading and then you end up logging out, it will delete whatever you had still saved that needed to upload.
okay, so
So
it says great recording is uploaded. You can close the tab or
bad Nate.
there you are.
What was Nate saying? If you're logged in,
yeah, I was saying, so if you log into the app and then we go live, and then afterwards, let's say your computer crashes or your phone reboots, right? And it was in the middle of uploading. If it logs you back out, that recording is gone.
oh, okay,
Yeah, I don't know why they don't make that more apparent, but I had to dig to find that. So
got it.
Where does this upload? Where does it actually upload at?
well, you're